Congrats to your son, by the way.
They are the most talked about, most controversial albums on the Apple Top 100 all-time album list. We're going to do a dive. We're going deep. You know, Greg and I like to go deep with our dives. Next on Iller and Filthier.
Hey, Brian.
So, what are you doing, man?
Well, I sat back and thought about the things we used to do. We had a lot of fun.
You really want to do this with me?
Bro, you know I do.
Another week, another show, episode 7, I believe, Greg.
Yeah, it's getting big. It's fun, man.
You don't hear that often, do you?
Nope, no, very, very rarely. Yeah.
So this is another kind of back-to-back weeks to where we dive a little deeper into the previous episode that we had. So last week, Greg broke down and we talked about the Apple Top 100 albums of all time. And I know that a few of the messages that I had gotten from Greg prior to us going live, Greg was like, "Oh, I can't believe this. We got to do a show on it." I was like, "Oh, perfect." So, Greg, a week has gone by after that episode where we kind of went through the entire list. How are you? Are you feeling any different? Don't get into too many details just now, but how are you feeling kind of overall?
I still don't like the order, but I think that's okay because I think that's too hard, right? Everybody would have a different order. And I don't even know how you decide if something's number 57 or 84.
Right.
But I now have a better understanding, and I think I get a little more about how they went about it. And so I've broadened my spectrum a little bit this week, I feel like.
Sure.
It came down, I let the anger, got past that stage. And
now, was it actual kind of anger or was it shock? I mean, I know there's a little bit of, we're putting on a little for the show.
Yeah.
But there was, I will say
Shock's
I
a
had
good
a
word.
little shock.
Yeah. I think it's the world we live in now of the clicking and, let's put, there's no reason after 40 years that all of a sudden we're like, Thriller's not number one. And what I think I would only want that if it was something like newer. I guess that's what threw me is as an older album. All of a sudden it's like, I've never seen that on the top list of anything. You know what I mean? So again, I started really going about our criteria. Like if we go back through it, the criteria were like, full representative of culture, inspired a generation, best-selling in production, but it was more about the story, I think, that they're trying. So versus just hits, things like that. I mean, an album that tried to kind of tell a story.
Right.
So I tried to think about it that way. So I kind of get. So again, this could be like the Video Music Awards back in the days. People would always be like, "Oh, I can't believe it." It won because of the video, like the production, like how movies are like that sometimes, right? Like a movie might win, might not be the best movie, but it's like it was shot very well, or So I think in some ways I'm thinking of it like that. Is like, is it's the way it's made, and not necessarily like, oh, I don't like a couple songs on there. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, we had talked about as we went over that list, and there were definitely 3 albums that I know that I had seen the most controversy online within TikTok or Instagram when you're flipping through. And, once we start talking about the Apple Top 100, it starts feeding you more of that content. So it's a bunch of guys that are like us that are like talking about the albums. And I would say 80% or so of the content that I would stumble upon, they were pretty disagreeing with especially the top 10, top 15 albums. And there were three in particular that I think not only caught our attention,
Yeah.
but has caught the ire of a lot of people online. Those three being number one, Lauryn Hill's Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. That was number one. The second one, I believe, was Frank Ocean Blonde.
Number
and
5.
That was, do you remember what Apple had?
5.
5?
5, yeah.
Okay, had that 5. And then I believe the other was Radiohead.
Yeah, Radiohead was at 12, so not in the top 10, but it's just one that one we kind of talked about just because it, like I said, for me, it's a band that's super popular and loved by other artists and referenced by other artists, but like they're very inspirational, and a lot of people I know love them, and I've never been able to grasp it, so that one stuck out to me a little bit.
And when you're looking at albums of all time, albums of all time, I think if you're getting into the top 100, that's a pretty good album.
Yep.
When you start talking about top 20, those are special, I would think.
Yeah. Yep.
And top 10 for sure, those have got to be something that crosses multiple generations and styles of music and kind of surpasses your personal preferences to where people that are kind of into music and be like, yeah, no, I totally get it. It may not be my music, but I totally get it.
Yeah.
I think out of all of this, and why I was excited to do this episode following last week, where we just kind of looked at it from a bigger picture and looking at all kind of 100 albums, you had relayed to me a story earlier in the week that for me completely changed the way I was looking at this and gave it a little more perspective to this 49-year-old dad. Okay. And I know that 49 was a few years ago for you. You don't have your t-shirt on this week, but I mean, we're kind of in the same age, but do you recall the story that you told me early on where I think you were headed somewhere with somebody? You guys have got to hear the story. And I only got a bit of it. Yeah. And I said, Greg, just save it for the show because I want to hear it myself. This makes it for me. So I want to hear the story.
You're talking about when I was with my mistress?
Yeah. That's a different show.
Oh, yeah. Can
that
still
was
edit.
our Father's Day show.
Oh, yeah. Damn it. All right. We'll edit this out. No, I'm just kidding. So my daughter and I, Saturday night, was it Saturday? Friday night. Last Friday, we're cruising home. She's learning to drive right now, so I ride with her and pick her up from work and stuff. And we were talking about.
So she's 15.
15. Yep. Okay. I was asking her. I just happened to ask. I said, "Hey, what do you think of Frank Ocean?" And she said, "Daddy's my favorite artist." And I was like, "Okay, this is good." And I just kept asking, like, why is that? She's like, I love his music. I love his style. We had a little more talk about it today too. And she has a friend over. Friend said the same thing. So we talked a little more about why. She said she really likes the atmospheric sounds of it, which probably turned me off at first when I heard it. But she said she likes listening to it when she's doing homework. Said it feels like a movie. Thought that was an interesting description. And she's like, sounds kind of like a movie's playing or something. Mm-hmm. So it was it at that moment when I text you, it hit me that it's generational because we talked a little bit about, so if this, again, I don't know who the group of people that voted are. I know they described who they were, but maybe their ages and stuff. Maybe it's just something that struck them a lot more than you and I.
Well, the fact that this is a conversation that you were able to have with your 15-year-old daughter, where a lot of times I think we struggle as parents. We haven't had any really parent episodes. And I know Greg has been wanting us to maybe get that onto the schedule where we do a little more dad stuff. And I'm totally for that. But we get to a point as parents and as fathers, moms are probably kind of the same, but I think dads and moms, we all have different kind of relationships with our kids. And to have something to where you could have this discussion with your daughter, I thought was really, really cool. I don't have any girls. I've always wished that I could be kind of a girl dad. I think I'd be a pretty good one, but who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
I've got two great boys.
Yeah.
But I thought this was fantastic that you're driving with your daughter, learning to get her license and all that stuff. And then here's dad asking about Frank Ocean. And you're trying to understand. And it's almost kind of like what we all have gone through when we were younger. It's always the older generation trying to understand the younger generation. What do you what is it about these Beatles? You know, what is it about Guns N' Roses or NXS or Frank Ocean? You know, and I'm sure that I was it kind of a special moment, or am I just being blowing this out of proportion?
Yeah, I think in a sense it was nice just because I like having those conversations with my kids, like, and sometimes they're not in the mood, right? You got to catch them, and it was just one of those moments where she's willing to open up a little bit. Where I think her and I have similarities in that way, so I was just cool to kind of hear her perspective on that. And so that's why it was just one of those moments. You know, again, we were driving the car, we had a few minutes together, so it was. And I was excited that because I knew she knew of him, and I figured she liked him, but I didn't realize that he meant that much to her. She was like, yeah, he might be one of my favorite all-time artists. And this coming from a girl that's got Taylor Swift everywhere in her room too. So,
just like I do. So,
yep. So it was just cool to like, to get, I like I said, I tried listening to it. Rachel and I we were on a little mini road trip Saturday. So we popped it in, we started it. We're like, it wasn't the right soundtrack for a road trip. And then,
depending on what's going on in the car on the road trip.
Yeah. But I listened to it while working this week, and I much more enjoyed it, specifically just that listening to just while it was on. I was like, okay, like I get it, but, again, it's different.
But if it wasn't for this conversation that you had with your daughter, was there any other kind of motivation to give it a little more effort?
No, outside of us just talking about where we wanted to kind of, I like when I see lists like this. I've done this a few times. Like when I see lists or people talk about the best this, the best that, I like to listen to them because I'm just curious more than, I love music. And I want to like everything. Yeah. I want to, and that's what I took away from this last week. Like you said earlier, we were joking about being angry and stuff. But like, I definitely wasn't angry. Shocked. I'm still shocked. I'm still kind of just, it's like weird to me, some of the selections and where they are. But I get it. I mean, I get that everybody likes different things. And there's something that he appeals clearly to the younger generation. And I think their music, it's just what they like is very different. And you hit on it, and we can talk about this more. But I mean, if you think about when we would get in our cars as kids and you listen to your parents, and I was thinking about the oldies, right? Like when you hear like oldies 95, it's like, oh gosh, that's just like we would get in the car, But then our music was maybe a little louder and aggressive. We had, whether you liked, country and you like, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, or you like, 80s hair metal, or you listen to heavy metal or hardcore rap, like that we all did, kind of our generation. This is chiller and it's a different, it's more atmospheric. It's a little depressing sometimes, but it appeals to them probably because it's so different from our music.
There's definitely, music is a connection. It's a very personal thing. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to be in a situation where, and I hate being in situations like this, to where I feel like I'm trying to justify why I like either a movie or an album or a song or whatever. It's always very personal. Yeah. And so going into this week where we're going to talk about these 3 controversial albums and listening to your story with talking with your daughter and then going back to what I had said, I think last week, and when I approach these kind of lists is that I use it more as a exploratory discovery of just
Right.
kind of what's out there that maybe I should, if I'm wanting to dip a toe into this little lake, this little puddle to hear this or that, that it just kind of pushes it to the forefront for
Right.
me, as opposed to looking at it to where I'm like, oh my God, this is number 8. This is number 1. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And I would just hate for, like, I don't know if I would want any of my favorite albums to be anywhere near the top 100.
Right.
Because
right.
I don't
yeah.
want to have to sit there and listen to people just rag and shit on my stuff.
Yeah. Or be like, oh, weird, you like Taylor Swift. She's super pop,
And Taylor
like,
Swift's a great example of that too. Like, I'm a Johnny come lately on the Taylor Swift thing, and it's more of just because I was curious, like, as to what was kind of going on.
Yeah.
I do like her music. I do think she's very talented. I love her business acumen. I love
Very
the
much.
fact that she seems to lead a pretty good life to where people want to emulate her.
Yeah.
Which draws ire also. I get it.
She's got a good taste in sports. Like, yeah, you're right.
She's a Chiefs fan, so I know that you gotta like her.
She's one of us.
And music is just so personal that I would hate to get out here and really start ripping on these albums out of, because they're not in my personal taste. So if there's somebody that's a big Lauryn Hill fan or a Frank Ocean fan or Radiohead fan, and I'm like just ragging on them.
Yeah.
Why?
Right.
Why would I do that?
Yeah.
Other than, well, it might make good clips or something, but that's just not me.
Yeah.
So I did look at this as, okay, I think you're the one that kind of brought up, well, why don't we do some homework and actually give them some listenings to the Lauryn Hill album, to the Frank Ocean album, and to the Radiohead. And I listened to all 3. As I think you did too.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, it's, and sometimes it's like anything, if you think about your favorite albums, you listen to them a lot and you listen to them over and over again. And sometimes, whether it's a movie or anything, sometimes things grow on you. So I wanted to give more than one listen, different moods, different scenarios, just to kind of see what I could find in there. And I was trying to think of an analogy today, and I was like, I think like a restaurant or a food is a good one to think about. Like we said with music, is like, yeah, it's not about rag. I don't like when people rag on other people's music. So I agree with you. I mean, I think it's all different. It's all creative. It's fun. Everybody comes at it from a different perspective. There's different moods about it. They make you feel a certain way. That's songs that move me either spiritually or physically, even like if I find myself bouncing my head, I mean, I know it's a good song or something I like. But I was thinking about like going to a restaurant. Like, I don't like oysters, for example. So if I was to go to, say, a top restaurant, best in the country, and this chef is like world known, I mean, if I don't like oysters, I'm not going to like his oysters, right? Like, it has nothing to do with him. It's not, it's just like, that's not my thing. Or if you order something that you didn't care for at a restaurant, sometimes it's like, well, it's not their fault. I ordered that just, because I didn't like it, not necessarily that it's bad. It's like, oh, I kind of wish I would have ordered this thing, Right. And so that's where I think about how it's with music sometimes is, yeah, there's no reason. I'm not want to rag on these things. It's just, it doesn't connect with me for whatever reason.
Right.
But there's a reason for that. And I think that's cool. I think there's a reason that, Elvis and the Beatles were so popular with the kids, and the parents thought they were the devil. And, it's like, I think that's cool. There's a reason you should, listen to things. That's why I think we all listen to things that the other generation doesn't like.
And also that as many different types of people as there are out there, as unique as a lot of us are, there's a type of music kind of for you. I think,
Yeah.
music just internationally, wherever you go, however far back we go, for whatever reason, music is going to, you just described it. It's going to connect with you spiritually, or you're just going to bop to it, or just
Yeah.
something connects. And
Yeah.
you may not be able to put it to words as to why you're connecting to it, but it just does. It speaks to you.
Right.
And sometimes that just happens. Sometimes you need extra motivation to, if we're going into the oyster stuff, maybe Chef Ramsay's in town and he's opening up an oyster bar, and your wife wants to go, or your mistress wants to go next week or something. You would give it a chance, and maybe you might turn it around and like
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Right. Right.
But you're giving it a chance, and you have that extra motivation because your wife wanted you to go, or you
Yeah.
had that motivation because Chef Ramsay was the one doing it, or that banger mistress of yours that's got the killer body. She's like, "Oh, oysters they're
That's
my favorite
thing.
Yeah.
So I'm sweating through it, trying to impress her.
But it's sometimes we need that extra motivation, and as an example of that would be the Guns N' Roses Appetite for Destruction.
Yeah.
There were some songs on there that I liked from back in the day that were big and popular or whatever, but the motivation for me to give it a deeper listen was doing our Iller and Filthier and knowing
Right.
that album meant a lot to you.
Yeah.
And so it was motivation for me to go and really listen to it, like actually put forth an effort to listen. And I came out of that like more of a Guns N' Roses fan, a big fan of that particular album. I found some other songs. I'm like, hey, there's some other songs on here that were pretty cool.
Yeah.
And after you had explained a few of the other ones, I'm like, oh, those are pretty good too.
Yeah.
So going to where we're specifically looking at these 3 albums, here's where I kind of had the motivation of listening, because the motivation was where we're doing it for the show. And I listened to all 3, and I was like, and I'll be honest, I was like, the Lauryn Hill one, it was fine.
It's a good listen, right?
It was fine.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't go into a house or party or something and be like, oh, what are you playing?
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, hey, okay. But it for whatever reason doesn't speak to me. I'm just not connected to it. I had a little extra motivation when you had sent another message and said, hey, it's actually pretty good. I think you would listen to it again also.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you said something about this would be a great vinyl.
I think, that one to me just seems like this seems like a vinyl listen, because it does, I will give it does have that end-to-end feel, right? Like it has a story, it has, it's not just songs, it's definitely like a package deal, which I think is part of the, the criteria behind this. Again, I would never put it, it's not number 1, but that's okay. Like I enjoy listening to it. It's got a cool feel to it, and it's well done. Like the audio, the sound, it's a very well done and great sounding album.
I can totally see that if I come across that album on vinyl, it's on sale, let's say, or like maybe you and I are hanging out, we're like, oh my God, there's the Lauryn Hill album. And like, let's take it home and listen and just buy it, take it home. I can see that. I can see doing that. But upon listening to it, I listened to it twice, and I'm like, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Now for the show, for Iller and Filthier, to have just kind of a healthy, fun discussion, fun being the operative word,
Yeah.
I don't mind having a little argument as to how is this number 1 over, let's just, and we'll throw out Thriller, because that would be another one I would say, I mean, if I think maybe most of us could agree, at least that's in the discussion.
Right.
For how big it was, and how not only just the album, but like the videos and just the overall cultural thing, which you explained why Apple, how they rated it, and here's the criteria for it. So for a healthy, fun discussion, I can absolutely have a conversation as to why I don't think maybe that kind of missed the mark.
Yeah.
But I have no problems whatsoever. And I just did a random search. Rolling Stone also had a top 500 list
Oh,
out that
okay.
they've updated.
Yeah.
And I believe if I wrote this down right, it was number 9 on the
Hmm.
Rolling Stone top 500.
Which seems still even high. I don't know. I don't know where you put it. Like, there's like it's well done, but again, I don't.
I think it's a good discussion. I
Yeah.
think you and I both kind of agree. Yeah, it's a good album. I said it's fine. There was a couple hit songs on there that I was like, oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could I have it just on in the background as we're cooking dinner, as maybe we're entertaining some friends or doing, hanging out? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not going to be one to where I'm like, I would make an argument for it to be number 1.
Yeah, the fact that to leapfrog those other albums is just silly. Like, and like I said, if it's never been up there before, that's what's weird. It's like, did it creep its way up? And I think I would have almost expected, like, I'd have been less shocked to see like Taylor that in that spot. You know what I mean? Just like, hey, she's so big now, bam, like she's, but for
The
it to be an
world would
artist,
have burned down
yeah,
if Taylor was
I know.
anywhere near like top 10.
Yeah, the fact that she's behind Beyonce too, which is funny.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you. But no, it's a good listen. I much respect.
That's what
And
that's what you said.
Yeah.
That's what you said, and I was feeling good because I was like, it's a fine album. Number 1. I don't know about that, but if smarter people are saying that,
Yeah.
okay, that's fine. And then so let's jump back into the Frank Ocean one, because that's one
Yeah.
where I had more motivation after hearing that you
Yeah.
had this discussion with your daughter, and I'm like, that was something you and I had kind of talked about, and maybe it's a generational thing, and we're just like, oh well, how can it be over Thriller?
Yeah.
This is 2016 or whenever that came out.
Who's
But your daughter, somebody that is close to you,
Yeah.
and is like, I dig him.
And I wonder if so I learned a little more about him too, is my daughter had told me, so I don't know much about it. Apparently he's kind of off the grid now. Out and what happened is he was very close to his brother, and his brother passed suddenly in a car accident. And this Frank Ocean is also a big car guy.
Okay.
So it kind of hit him. And she was saying that so I'm wondering if there's like a little mystique to this. Like we talked about the 27 Club last week. Like, so would Amy Winehouse be maybe as big as she was if she didn't pass,
Right.
So the thought is, I just wonder if there's a mystique thing there too, that he's kind of disappeared, is what she said. So he's put out, I know, at least a couple albums, but then has kind of been quiet. So I don't know if that's an element of like this, everybody loved him, and where is he? And
yeah, that makes sense. All of that makes sense. And the motivation was your daughter said that he's one of her favorite artists, and so I gave it another listen after I did the first time around, because I was like, hey, okay, cool, because now we have somebody that's close to us, that is legitimizing his top ranking here.
Yeah.
And again, honestly, and I'm an R&B guy, I wasn't connecting.
Yeah.
Would I say it's bad? No.
It's super creative. I kind of feel somebody that makes music like that must have had a vision, like they went in. It's not just beats and rapping. It's like she said, there's this atmospheric stuff in the background. Some of it, that's where it gets weird, is like there'll be this beat, then all of a sudden something would change, and there was this abruptness to it that just rubbed me wrong. I'm like, what the hell is that? But again, I did listen to it at work this week too. Found it a little more appealing. It does do good as like background music. You know what I mean? It can just kind of play.
But nothing to where you're storming into your daughter's room and like, what the fuck are you listening to?
Yeah. It's cool. It's mellow. But yeah, it's super creative. Again, that's you've got to have a vision to kind of paint something like that, right? Where you're not just going in and rapping over a beat or playing a guitar, 3 chords on a guitar. It's pretty creative.
respect to the artists that do that, and whatever generation, whoever
Yeah.
finds a connection with an artist. And so your daughter's got one with Frank Ocean. That's awesome. It's just not something that I'm like, I rushed to adding it. I added it to
Right.
my playlist or anything. I was kind of shocked, to be honest with you. I thought of the 3 albums that we were going to really take a listen to, I thought that would be one to where I'm like, oh, this is right up my alley.
Yeah.
And kind of what you were talking about, there was just I wasn't connecting with it. I did do a search on the Rolling Stone Top 500 just
Okay.
to see where it was at,
Yeah.
and I believe it was number 79 on Rolling
Crazy.
Stone.
Yeah, that makes. I mean, again, that when you see something like that, you're like, that makes sense. You
And
know,
that's
Yeah.
high, right? I mean, I'm saying
Yeah,
that's a
a
great
five-
number.
right.
Top
Yeah.
500's good.
yes, yeah, good number. And top 100 on that list is impressive.
Yeah. But to be
Yeah.
number 12, healthy fun
5.
discussion, I can argue with that one.
Yeah, 5. Yeah, 5 on. And who knows?
Or 5.
Again,
Yeah, I'm sorry, 5.
it's maybe the digital stuff that's in there, like some of the things that I don't love necessarily, but again, it's just a taste thing. It doesn't appeal to me, but it certainly appeals to the younger generation because I find a lot of their music has that digital element, and it's a little more somber. Some of it, I feel like a lot of what I hear my kids listen to just seems to come like the skinny jean rappers, like we talked about before. I mean, there's just a little bit of a vibe to it that's just different.
So if I were to turn this around on you a little bit and say, let's just say, for example, it's safe to assume Guns N' Roses is like one of your favorite bands of all
For
time.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just say we're in a discussion with a group of people and they're just ripping on Guns N' Roses. Would that bum you out, or does that kind of reinforce and you're like, I'm even more of a fan because you guys are shitting on them?
No, I wouldn't. I would understand it. Because again, I'm really commonsensical when it comes to like music and stuff though. I understand it's not,
But does
it's
that
not
make
forever.
you like, maybe they aren't as good as I'm thinking?
No,
Or does that
'cause-
double your passion for them?
No, yeah, just I know I like it and I like it for certain reasons, but I'm a drummer that likes certain kind of music. So it appeals to me. Like I like a guitar and I like a drum and I like to be moved by music. And so when I hear something that I love, and again, sometimes you like music for where you were, like, where you like, whether it's a good time, a bad time. I mean, something speaks to you and
Great point.
there's a reason, there's maybe the first time you listen to Frank Ocean, something happened in your life and you're like, God, I love that out, and so yeah, if I was in that scenario, but I also get it. A lot of the music that I like, I recognize is not like if I'm talking to like a real music nerd, like I told you, there's these every time I get in a conversation with like a drummer, they're always like jazz trained and they start rattling off, hey, do you know blah blah blah? And I'm like, no, man, but I love Tommy Lee. Like, have you ever seen his penis? Like, I feel dumb because I'm like, I feel like I like that kind of music, and that's okay. And so I get that other people, Foo Fighters is one that Foo Fighters is probably the one that I get the most. They're one of my all-time favorite bands, but a lot of people that don't love them kind of go like, oh, their songs all sound the same. And I think I could say that for some of the stuff my kids listen to, because if you're not into it and I think that's okay. I mean, the Foos have a certain sound, but I probably heard more, people like, oh, those guys suck, and it's okay. Like they don't have to be great musicians, but they put on a good show and that's the other thing. And we can get into that too, is I think the live music element of anything is what helps me connect to an artist.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times I don't like a band, or I might just, be like, oh yeah, they're cool. And then I go see them and I'm like, oh man, like I just fall in love with them. So I think there's something about the live music tie that pulls me in. And a lot of these artists I've never seen, or will have the chance to see.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think, I know you're a movie guy, like movies quite a bit and stuff, and we talk some movies too, but does this strike you as like is this Frank Ocean album and the Lauryn Hill maybe and Radiohead, is this like the Oscars when there's that movie that nobody's seen, but it's like everybody talks about it. It wins all the awards, but it's like, I would probably never go see it. Like
Possibly. I
like
mean,
it's
if
very
you're
art. Yeah.
bringing that up, that it comes to, I think, 1997. This is just an example where
Okay.
Saving Private Ryan is out and everybody's like, that's
Okay.
the shoe-in to
Yep.
win.
Yep.
And then here comes this upstart Miramax
What was
movie with Gwyneth Paltrow's Shakespeare in Love, and it wins Best
it?
Picture.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And people are like, what? What?
Yeah.
And I love Saving Private Ryan, but I also love Shakespeare in Love. And I
Yeah.
know like the movie bros that were all like Saving Private Ryan and just their heads exploded
Yeah. Yeah.
because they were like, there's no way. And I felt fortunate because I was like, I get it. I mean, I'd be happy either way, but I'm not upset.
Yeah.
I like both movies. I see them both being really, really good. And then I guess, now you look back and it's like Harvey Weinstein was involved and all this stuff.
Oh,
but
no.
that's a good point. I hadn't considered that, but there's a little bit, I don't know. Is it kind of a snobbery thing that you're kind of leading into or no?
Yeah, a little bit. Like but I just think of that. Wasn't there like either this year's Oscars or last year's Oscar? Wasn't there a movie that just cleaned house and it was like, no, it was different language or something? I don't remember. I'm trying to think of which.
Was it Parasite or something? The movies in the last 10, 15, I feel like I'm at that age.
Yeah.
I'm at the age now where I don't have any connection with music these days, and I don't really have any connection with movies, and especially like the best pictures and stuff, especially in the last 15 years. I'm like, I haven't seen any of these. I have no desire to. Prior to that, Amy and I, my wife and I, we were like, we have to go see all of the nominated movies. We knew all about them.
Yeah.
We were into it.
Okay,
And then now it's just different. And yeah, some of the movies I'm like,
was it Banshee of Inisherin maybe? Is that what I'm thinking of? Like that was
I hadn't even heard of that.
That's from 2 years ago.
Well, I know like
Oppenheimer was. I mean, Oppenheimer I heard was
Oppenheimer
a good
was just
movie.
a big blockbuster, but like Parasite wasn't that one? It was a Korean movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then everything everywhere all at once or something. I think that was another.
Yes. Yeah, Everything All at Once won in 2022.
And that was kind of a very obscure kind of a movie.
Yeah.
I know movie people understood and watched it and saw it or whatever, but
so that's what I'm thinking is, you're right. Parasite won in 2019 against, Irishman, Joker, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is amazing.
There's a little, there's a little snobbery in it. And
maybe that's it.
I generally, I don't like having conversations with the snobbery type that have their nose up too high. Now, for those that actually have a lot of knowledge and background and have listened to a lot of things or watch a lot of stuff, and they seem to be pretty open-minded, I would love to hear what they have to say.
Right.
But there are the type that are just like, just a little too much. They're a little too extra.
Yeah.
And I just don't like to have, I just don't want to exchange information with them because I have a good ear for what I like music wise.
Yeah.
We're going back to the same, it's a personal connection. I just know what I like.
Yeah.
And the same with movies. So I mean, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Try to connect those dots. So yeah.
You mentioned, have you seen Saving Ryan's Privates?
That's on the
RedTube channel.
RedTube, whatever that is.
Whatever whatever she watches on, I don't know. She's the one that always tells me.
And actually, I haven't seen that, but I know that's like an actual movie that they've made with. I mean, there's like they make all those movies.
which are fantastic names, by the way. I would love to be somebody like, just because I've done so many like corporate retail jobs. I love the thought that I know there's somebody somewhere, having meetings on like, what are we calling this thing?
Right. What's a play on words for this year's Joker or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That's my favorite part is there was whatever they landed on, as bad as it is, there's 9 other options. They were like, no.
right. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up though, as far as like the movies, and there might be a little bit of that too. And that kind of crept into my mind when I saw Lauryn Hill's album up there.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones, but the Frank Ocean one, I think I could see the Lauryn Hill more than I can the Frank Ocean one, but I'm not shitting on the Frank Ocean because
right.
I want to go back to like what you and I were talking about. It's very personal, and we're not here to just make somebody, feel like crap about the type of music they like. It's you like what you like.
Yeah.
Now,
I think for me, it's probably more the comparison to what's on there, because you're nestled amongst Thriller and Purple Rain and Beatles,
which are all albums though that we have more knowledge of,
and you expect to see there, right?
Yeah,
you expect to see there, like Billy Ocean. Any of those Ocean albums are really good.
So let's talk of the Radiohead one now.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
So again, like this has come up. A lot of people I talk to, a lot of friends I play music with, just I've run across a lot of people that are just like, God, I love Radiohead, and I've always heard OK Computers. This like that's the one. I think they have their other album is also really popular. There's a second one. I think it's I'll have to look it up. But that OK Computer I've always heard big things about. So I've tried to listen to them before. I wouldn't say I've given them like my best effort, but because I get a little turned off by it, I think that's what it is.
Like, what kind of music is that? What kind of band are they?
It's alternative rock.
Okay.
I mean, is probably the best way to describe it. So
is that the same as you would consider Smashing Pumpkins? Is that alternative rock?
Yeah. Yep, I would think so. Yeah, okay. It's in that vibe. It's a little more. It's a little more depressive sounding. I think that's what turns me off by it. It's just really like. But this time I did catch some things listening to it. Like I think I could get it to grow on me a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because this week when I listened to it, there was one listen where I was like starting to kind of. I referenced Foo Fighters earlier. I picked up like something that sounded like something in a Foo Fighters song, and the light bulb went off. Like that makes sense because I'm sure Dave Grohl would probably be like, "Oh yeah, love Radiohead." You know what I mean? Like, so where the inspirations that musicians take from other people, I could see that as them being very inspirational to other bands. And so to hear something in their song that I was like, "Oh, I think I've heard that in a Foo Fighters song," kind of made sense to me.
Right.
Yeah, it's got, there was parts of it that where it starts getting bigger. The music picks up. You hear more drums, more guitar. And I started kind of like, okay, yeah, I could maybe get used to this. His voice kind of bugs me. And for some, I don't know why. Usually that doesn't bother me. But for one of those reasons, I don't connect well with his voice. But I mean, again, he's just, people just rave about them.
Does Rachel have any friends that has a certain pitch or a voice that you're just like, oh, yeah, for whatever reason,
not really
turns you off? Like you're just like, I don't like her because of her tone.
No,
her pitch. Something.
I know what you mean.
Voice.
I mean, I know those people, but nobody in our circle I can think of per se. But yeah, that's fine. It's usually like coworkers. I feel like it happens,
Right.
She likes Radiohead. Radiohead's a little more in her lane. Again, she grew up fan of the Cure, the Smiths, Morrissey, which is funny. So the Smiths was on the list somewhere. And so when we were driving up north to our friend's cabin, Saturday we listened to the Smiths too. So I tried to make a point to listen to a lot of these albums, just as I'd seen them,
Right.
I was like, oh, I gotta, wanted to hear more of, like you said, more of just a journey of
Yeah.
exploring.
And that makes it fun, even though
Yeah.
if it's not your music, the journey and the exploring, and then especially if you're with somebody that they appreciate a little bit more, maybe they turn you on to something, some tidbit of information.
Yeah. Yeah. We listened to the Chronic too,
Oh, did
because
you?
because we talked about that, just what a great album that is too. Just listen to that again. I mean, that inspired so much music.
This just sounds like a fun trip to be in your car.
Yeah.
Do you and Rachel act like you guys are on your own show now? When you're in the car and you're like,
Yeah, we got to get her on. She keeps talking about it. We're gonna have to.
but are you actually talking about the albums and stuff and having this kind of discourse like you and I are having on the show?
Yeah, we talk a lot about we do talk about the show a lot, or I run stuff by her a lot. I mean, we do that for everything. But yeah, that's what's fun is we both like music. We listen to there's music on a lot in our house. We tend to play music when we're cooking, we're outside sitting on the deck. Other times,
What's just nobody's watching our show. Like when it comes to like putting on a sexy vibe,
mm-hmm.
who's in charge of the music, and like what example of an album would you put on? Which one would she put on?
It's very easy.
Really? Is it?
Yeah, she sometimes leads the. What's up, Jeff? She she is the one generally, I would say, who picks it.
Because at that point, why? I mean, keep the momentum going. If she's feeling it, baby, you go ahead and pick the music.
Do you want to put on Guns N' Roses again? No, okay. It's The Weeknd.
Oh, yeah,
bomb ass music.
Okay,
yeah, and it's a shocker to you, probably, right?
That is a shocker.
Yeah, followed usually by something a little heavier, like it's either but Weeknd we love The Weeknd, actually. Like we've grown to just love his music. So now, sadly, when I hear it come on, like I'm at the grocery store, I'm like, oh man, I need to go. Like,
blood pressure kind of increased a little bit.
It's like Pavlov's dog with me. So watching that Super Bowl halftime show, he was
right.
Was like, whoo.
Well, that's cool. I mean, and for both of you, that you guys can kind of agree on something. That is pretty neat.
Yeah. What about you? You're digging out the old R&B jams?
Yeah. I mean, if we're cooking or if it's just us, and I'm usually the one picking the music, I don't have a problem with, like, we have very similar tastes. But most of the time, if we're going to enjoy the night, I have to be in control.
Right.
So if we're doing something very simple, like if we're so we have Google speakers throughout the house or whatever, and we have YouTube music. So I would always have Google go off of one particular song. So I would ask, I say, hey, what song are you thinking of? And as long as it's something within my wheelhouse that I want to listen to, I'll be like, okay, that's fine. So it's always like
that's cool.
Something late like some 80s
Jodeci.
Power ballad, or we can go through like 90s R&B, so Jodeci, all that good stuff. But we're very much kind of the same in our music. She gets a little more white than I do, so when I'm not around, I'll hear like Sweet Home Alabama and stuff that she listened to back in the day, where it was all white is right and all that stuff. But when I'm around, we dip a little bit more into the R&B and more of the power ballads, guys and the girls, Whitney Houston, stuff like that, Madonna, Chicago. Awesome. So
I do like a good power ballad.
Yeah. So again, it's what I just know what I like, and I have a strong emotional connection to a lot of the music that I have. And if it's outside of that, I just need extra motivation to give it a chance. So we talked about the Guns N' Roses Appetite for Destruction. Well, my motivation was because that's one of your favorites of all
Yeah.
time. I'm like, yeah, I want to give this a really good shot at listening to it. And I'm glad I did. But outside of it being for you, I think it would just be a couple of the songs I'd be like, oh yeah, when I'm at
Yeah.
the strip club and be like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Rocket Queen.
Right.
Yeah, it's cool too because we play like our kids now, us and some of our friends, our kids have grown up listening to some of our music and they call it like boat music because there was some playlists we'd always have going and we were in a boat club a couple years ago where we spent some summers on the lake and then
Yeah.
even at home we play a lot of Cali reggae stuff, which is a little bit like Sublime, but there's other bands just it's got a reggae vibe, but with this California kind of influence. So it's almost a little more hip hop inspired.
Right.
But we love that because it's super chill. Jeff knows it. When Jeff's here, he knows that. But it's cool. So my son is into collecting vinyl right now, and he wanted to change his art. He's about to be a senior. His room, to look kind of cool. So he's been hanging albums in his room.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
it's so fun seeing what he's buying because he's starting to buy stuff that we play a lot. So it's just really cool to see some of the albums. Like he picked up the Deftones, Incubus, Stick Figure, Slightly Stupid, and he bought the new Creed special edition, which is great. So it's just really cool to see that like they're hearing stuff in the house and they must not hate it. You know what I mean?
But it's also going back to the parental thing that we're talking about, and the dad thing is it's sometimes we take whatever kind of ways we can connect with them that we
Yeah.
can.
Right.
And so if he's buying these albums and he's decorating his room with the album covers of bands that you grew up with or that you liked or that your
Yeah.
band plays, that's still something that kind of connects you. And
Yeah.
I think we would take that every day if we can.
Right, for sure. Yeah, and I go back to when I was a kid, my parents would my mom especially, she was always open-minded to listen to stuff. I remember listening to Metallica with her and stuff, and just the thought of that just makes me laugh. But she over time with different bands I was in, she'd always, hear me playing the songs, and she got into, some of the Poison and hair metal stuff because it was blues based, so you could dance to it.
Mhm.
She'd be like, yeah, I was upstairs ironing and dancing along, just cracking up, like thinking about that. But yeah, it's I think that's what's super cool about music. Yeah, having those, Dylan and Rob Zombie. I totally remember that. But it's it's cool that they listen to it and know it as your music. And sometimes and so Zach Bryan is a new artist that I've gotten into. He's probably one of the newer big popular artists that's out there. He's kind of a country, like alt country folk. I don't even know where you put him.
Right.
Artist.
I'm
totally
noticing a
dig
lot
him.
of those groups or bands
Yeah.
that
Yep.
are kind of country-ish,
Yeah.
but more rock or even kind of rap, I guess, which is throwing me off.
There's a lot of combo of that. Like I was listening to like Morgan Wallen's a really popular artist right now, right? And he's had some controversy and stuff. But anyway, he's huge, right? He like he's country, but his had beats to it. Like it had actual hip hop like bass line, kind of beats and stuff. So I was like, it's interesting how they're melding that. And I think that's what, kids like that. So obviously it kind of makes sense.
Modern Southern rock, Jeff is saying.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah, it's singer-songwriter, it's just a guy and his guitar. It's not so much a band. I totally dig this guy, but my daughter is who turned me on to him. So I like pulling from them too.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Any way we can connect.
Yeah.
And I found myself slipping into where I would make fun of a lot of their stuff.
Yeah.
And once I caught myself from doing it, and that it annoyed me that I was doing that just because I was putting down their stuff just because they were younger.
Right.
But it's kind of opened up my eyes a little bit, and it's just so weird because I remember it was like a year or two ago. My older son, for Christmas, he was like, yeah, I'd love to get a record, you know. And
Yeah.
so I was like, well, who would you want? I'll go get it for you, because it's kind of cool, because I'm
Yeah,
the one
yeah.
collecting the records. And he was like, you know, and so who's the guy that was fighting with Drake?
Kendrick?
Kendrick Lamar,
Yeah.
the one with the minivan on the cover.
Yeah, yeah.
He wanted that one, and he brought it home, or I brought it home for him, or he opened it up for Christmas. I forget exactly the details of it, but it's his album. And I remember he would play it, and I would walk through the house. I'd be like, oh, this new stuff. I don't know what this is. And then lo and behold, I think that album on the Apple Top 100,
Yeah.
that's what, top 10, 20, something like that?
Oh, it was 8, I think.
8?
Let me look. He
and like
was,
he's huge and like
with the
super
van,
mad,
good.
respected by other rappers from
7.
cross generation, that he's like this lyrical genius. And here I didn't know anything about him.
Yeah.
And I feel stupid. And I'm like,
He is behind Stevie Wonder and ahead of Amy, Nirvana, and Beyonce.
well, let me ask you this. We're down to the last couple minutes of the show. Kind of a bigger question. Do you think that you could be with someone that didn't have the same musical taste that you do? Like, do you think that you could be with somebody that had maybe just opposite musical tastes?
I think you can, but I think I mean, yes, you can, but I think what makes some relationships better, stronger, faster, to quote Kanye West. No,
Jeff
it's just
says yes, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, you can, but I think it's more fun when you share some of those things, and it's okay to have your own stuff. I think that's important too, right?
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, we both have certain stuff we listen to that we don't love. Like, she's always telling me she's not a big Van Halen fan, and you know, for whatever reason, just Van Halen doesn't do it for her. And same thing, I don't like some of the stuff that she likes. But we come together on so many other things. You know, there's just so much stuff that we like, you know.
So a long road trip. You guys have stuff in common to where you guys are rocking out and singing and.
Yeah. Or I like road trips sometimes, digging out stuff you haven't heard, you know, or like, I mean, it was, gosh, it's been a while. It's probably 5-6 years ago. We were coming back from a weekend. We went to Madison to see a concert, and we threw on Limp Bizkit. This is pre like Limp Bizkit kind of having the resurgence they've had. Like,
you had mentioned that on the last show.
Yeah. We were like, does this hold up? And then we put it on. We were just laughing. We were like, gosh, I can't believe we like this. You know, at one point in time, we were like, this is awesome. So
that's
just kind of
fun. That's the fun thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It all comes back to, again, just your phase of your life. Like, that's what I love about music. And that's what's cool about how music's made too. And you hear bands talk about that a lot. Like, it's, you know, funny to see a band like Metallica sing their songs that they wrote when they were 17 and had no money and were living in vans, when they're like hopping in their airplane. James is hopping in his plane after a show and flying to his house in Vail, like, you know, but singing about how terrible things were, you know.
What about compatibility in porn with your spouse? Do you think that's important, or is that separate to where you just make sure that you don't?
Yeah, that should be, you got to be compatible with that. You know, you don't want to be turned off by the wrong thing, you know, so you just got to know. I like, for our porn, we like a good storyline, you know.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think you and I would be compatible.
Have I ever told you my $1 million idea? For porn, I feel like there's not enough like choose your own ending kind of adventure thing. I kind of feel like sometimes it'd be cool, or like if it was like you weren't sure, it was like roulette. Like, maybe this time she really did just want a pizza, and you're just like, oh.
They had those on DVD. How do I know? Because Amy got me one. It was a Jenna Jameson one.
Hilarious. But it was like all fake stuff, or like,
but it was almost choose your adventure.
Yeah, that's
so
funny.
You'd come up to a certain thing, and you have to get the DVD, the remote, and choose which way hilarious. You wanted Jenna to do something. Totally crazy.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, those were like special edition ones. Yeah, no, I just think I'm always funny. It's like, yeah, maybe there really is a pipe broke. at this house.
Porn D&D, exactly like that.
That's some funny shit.
Well, I think we had a good discussion on the 3 probably most controversial albums that we saw online also that people were talking about, with Apple's top 100 of all time, Lauryn Hill, the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, Frank Ocean Blonde, and then Radiohead OK Computer. Greg and I made it a point to go through this last week and listen to them a few times. Everybody can like what they want to like. I think when we were talking about Greg being angry and just all this, obviously a little put on for the show. It's a head scratcher, and I agree. If we want to get into the fun, healthy discussion of, okay, is it really number 1? Should it be number 10? Should it be in the top 20? It's fun if you can have a discussion where you can keep it that way. But I kind of go back to, I like to use these lists to discover other things as just a heads up to, oh, maybe I should check out this album. Regarding these 3 in particular, like I said, I don't think I'm adding them to my playlist, but I'm not mad if they're on in the background.
Right.
If I'm driving with Greg and Rachel to God knows where, whatever swinger convention they go to, they can put on whatever they want.
Lords of Acid, probably.
Oh, do they have a new lead singer?
I have no clue.
I saw you follow them on our account, and they popped up, and there's a new lead singer on there.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine they're even the same people in that.
Maybe we need to have just the Lords of Acid night.
Yeah. Now we can
have our significant others with us. Maybe we'll turn the cameras off on those shows and just have the audio going.
I love it.
All right.
Another good night, Brian.
From Greg and Brian, the iller and filthier crew, and all of our interns working behind the scenes, we bid you all adieu. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next week. See ya.